Hello, and welcome to the Tonic Accord. I don't know about you guys, but it seems like in this current political landscape, each podcast, news source, or opinion comes with a spin. Sometimes the spin takes you to the far left, other times the far right. Sometimes you don't even know that the spin is there, but in general, there seems to be a lack of a moderate voice in the media and in politics. Here at the Tonic Accord, we are truly hoping to help the middle get a voice, and to provide people with a centered and balanced message. A tonic chord is a very important reference in many forms of music. It describes two extreme notes, a high and a low, resonating simultaneously. In this chord, the addition of the middle note helps anchor down the sound, and it creates somewhat of a harmony and agreement between the other, more extreme notes. This can be a good metaphor for the importance of cooperation and discussion in politics. A country needs a moderate and sensible center to bring the outer extremes together. Good harmony is not only important for everyone, but it is better for the social fabric. And with that, let's get after it. My name is Alex Kopytko. I studied political science and Spanish, and I'm currently living in Madrid, working for the community in Madrid.
Hello, my name is Drew Knepley. I study political science as well and cultural anthropology, and I currently work in political media in Santa Monica, California.
Sorry, I just remember that we always used to joke in university that one day we wanted to make a radio show or podcast, so it's kind of cool that we're finally sitting down and doing that.
Finally here.
It's a good Lots time to talk about.
It's a lot to talk about. We have a lot on the agenda. It feels like the election has really finally kicked off. We just had two Democratic debates, each stacked to the brim with candidates. A lot of which I had not known before this last week. So,
me neither, man.
Yeah,
I remember we were joking to each other that we needed cheat sheets for this.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
All the names.
I know, it's like those matching games you did as a kid in school. All right. So that's the first thing we're going to talk about. We have two things on the agenda this time. One is covering these Democratic debates, looking at strategies, who's coming up, who's going down, why is even some people running in the first place. And then after that, we're going to touch a little bit on foreign policy and specifically Iran and how that is becoming a hot button issue as far as U.S. foreign policy on the global scale. So first off, I think just overall in general, these debates were kind of awkward. I mean, there was a lot of the setup was just like it was weird to watch them try to rein in all these politicians that were trying at every moment to yell and shout and budge their way into the spotlight. And I frankly, I enjoyed listening about policy changes, and I enjoyed learning more about candidates, but overall it was awkward and cringy at times. It was really cringy. What'd you think?
I completely agree. It's funny. I heard someone last night, I think, I don't know, it was on the news or something, and they're like, it almost had the feel of The Bachelorette or something.
Yeah.
Where you just had 10 people fighting for the roses, fighting for the next step,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
It was cringy. I mean, and the funniest part to me, especially like in night one, you had Bill de Blasio, going after Beto. And it just looked like two guys that are barely in this race. Some of the people, some of the things, I'm just like, Jesus, like what are they trying to get at, And I guess when someone only has a minute to speak, you have to just condense all your policy points down. It's like, how do you solve climate change in 1 minute? Ready, set, go.
Yeah.
And if I disagree with you, you have, 30 seconds to rebuttal. It's like, just meant to be just a clusterfuck.
It's so funny because because they have that rule, right, that if you're mentioned or criticized by name, then you get a rebuttal. I almost feel like at certain points people wanted to get named so that they could just get more time to rebuttal.
Completely. Yeah.
So let's.
And I think the first night was worse than the second night. I have to say, just out of the woodworks, I think the first night was even more awkward.
Yeah, certainly even more boring and awkward. The second night was awkward and exciting, at least.
Yeah,
but
most definitely.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think let's go over basically like the kind of the strategy, right? Like I kind of view them in tiers of like the top dogs, right? Obviously, the leader is Joe Biden. He's the one that's he's polling the best. But and then below that you have what? You have Sanders, Warren.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, Buttigieg right now is kind of up, I would say, almost into that top tier.
Yeah, but let's think about how they were polling before the debates, right?
Okay. Yeah.
You know, it was pretty much Sanders and Warren, and then Biden were the top dogs. And then
most definitely.
And then, because if you think, like, it all comes back to name recognition at the beginning, right? A lot of these people, like Hickenlooper, and Moulton, and you know.
What about Williamson? I thought she was the true standout in the night too. You know, fight Trump with love.
Right, fight Trump with love. She was literally on the far left corner of the debate, having like sound issues. Like they'd ask her a question, she'd be like, "Excuse me, what'd you say? Excuse me, I think, what did you say?" And then be like, "Time's up." And we're like, "Oh my gosh, poor Williamson."
Yeah, she was so far into Siberia that they had to check her reception sometimes.
Yeah, it's pretty, but it's pretty obvious that like.
I think the strategy right now is for the lower tier guys to make a name for themselves by attacking,
totally.
The higher tier, right? So that's why we had the big kerfuffle between Kamala Harris and Joe Biden.
Yeah, that to me was pretty powerful on her behalf, because I think that most of the candidates tried to almost stay out of using any names. I mean, even Trump was barely mentioned, and I think it shows that she's willing to attack Biden so early on. I think it shows that she might actually have what it takes in a debate with Trump. You know, she doesn't want to play nice.
Yeah, she's good at it too. She's really good at like public speaking and being a fierce, like, you know, having a fierce point and making you think about it.
Totally.
She doesn't. I mean, obviously, a lot of this stuff is scripted. I mean, who are we kidding? But she at least doesn't sound like super scripted. Like I remember 2016, Ted Cruz. He would like turn to the camera. He'd be like 45 degrees center, and then be like, "America, pause. I want to talk to you," and he'd be like, so scripted. But Kamala Harris at least seems natural.
Right, and I think she's just such a great speaker, and she really did come with just a arsenal of weapons to strike with, you know. And I think that's part of her past as a prosecutor.
Oh, for sure. That's a good point. Yeah, she's just
I think
well
she
equipped.
just can get her hands dirty. Yeah, she's really good at doing that, you know. And I mean, I don't agree particularly with some parts of her policies, but I think that right now, if the Democrats really want to put up a fight with Trump eventually, they need someone that can get their hands dirty.
Yeah, because, you know, they need someone, because like Trump's whole thing is, I'm never going to back down. I'm going to fight until I die. And I think the Democrats need someone like that. And
completely.
As much as Joe Biden likes to be like that, you know, hey, I'm the uncle that'll wrestle with you. It's like, I don't know if he's actually has the guts to like really sink his teeth into Trump.
Right. Oh, I totally agree. And I mean, what did you think of Bernie? That's my big question, because I'm really unclear if I think he did well or bad.
You know, Bernie is kind of just I'm not necessarily a one-trick pony, but like he's just such a stick to his platform guy, and his platform hasn't changed in 5 years. So it's very just like we already get what we pay for, right? Like we know what Sanders is going to say. I think he's doing well though, because he is dominating the healthcare conversation, right? His idea for Medicare for all in 2016 was considered fringe, and now it's becoming more and more popular among multiple, probably 5 or 6 of these candidates support Medicare for all.
Completely.
And that's due to Sanders.
Completely. Yeah, he has. I always compare him in some ways to the Trump of the left. Obviously not in personal traits, but just in the way that I think he has almost reshaped the party around something he truly stands for. You know, and I think both of them have guided their parties in directions that maybe 10 years ago we'd think were insane.
Yeah, I absolutely. I think he's pulling, I don't even know if it's like, I mean, well, on healthcare, yeah, he's pulling the lefter. But
Right.
But it's also like more populist, right? Like it's like Bernie Sanders, like you said, like he is kind of like a Trump, where he does kind of represent anti-establishment. He's not like a Pelosi Democrat or a, you know what I mean? He's a very much, he was an independent until recently, technically. So,
Right. Oh, totally. But see, my big issue, like you were talking about Medicare for all, is that I'm just concerned that if all the candidates can't even agree on Medicare for all, what will the blue collar voters in, say, Pennsylvania or Ohio think? When, I don't know, you have your own private insurance, and you have these candidates that really can't really come to a perfect agreement over how they want to roll out this program. I mean, I think both nights, right, they had everyone raise their hands. If you support abolishing private insurance, support Medicare for illegal immigrants, and it just seems to me like it's still very chaotic in what they really want to go forward with, which I guess it's good because it's the first debate.
Yeah, there definitely seems to be a consensus that there would be some sort of radical change, right, in the healthcare system. Unless it's like Joe. I think Joe would just want to expand Obamacare. I don't know, but I think you're right, though, especially that question about illegal immigrants. Whether or not you think that's a good idea, that is not going to fly in a lot of middle ground states. A lot of people that had voted for Trump in 2016 but maybe want to vote for someone else now, which is, possible. I think that's going to hurt. That's going to hurt that demographic.
Completely. I just remember I think it was the New York Post yesterday had a photo, and it said, "Who wants to lose the election? Democrats support illegal immigrants." And it was too ironically funny. I mean, it's just I get in a perfect world. I mean, but for me, the side of also providing healthcare for illegals might just be really alienating for a lot of blue collar white voters that they truly need. I mean, I understand that Democrats need minorities, but I think they almost have most of the minorities. They need to gain back those Obama Trump voters.
Yeah, it's gonna be getting people. I mean, it's gonna be getting people that were in Wisconsin and Michigan that voted for Trump to not vote for Trump. And Ohio and Florida and Arizona. I mean, gosh, Arizona. Think about that, right? Democrats really need a win in Arizona, but they're not gonna get it if they're gonna be really adamant about providing health care for illegal immigrants.
Totally.
That's just a political reality. I also think, though, it's worth noting that, this is the primary, and politicians always go either left or right depending on their primary, and then will wedge their way back to the center, usually during the general. So, it might be one of those things where Biden half raises his hand now, and then as soon as he wins the primary, he's never going to talk about it again.
Right. Biden to me just seemed like he just really kind of his whole image right now is a little bit out of touch with where the party's going, and he still doesn't really know where he stands with, I think, the current Democratic Party. You know what I mean? I think those half finger up, it was like, is he raising his hand? Is he asking to be called on? It was just really unclear. It's sometimes why I even wonder why he's in the race, to be completely honest. I like the guy, and I think he has actually a decent record. But I think, like he said, my time is up. I think he summed it up perfectly with his own words.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing was he has eloquently put in the past all the reasons why he didn't want to run, and now he is. And it just seems like, why are you here? It reminds me a little bit of when Clinton, how you got the air of like, it's my turn, and it's like, I don't know if it is. That's not really how it works. Like, obviously, it's not about whose turn it is because Clinton lost.
That's a point very well taken. Yeah, I think that at times, yes, it is someone's turn, but also I think at this moment, both the left and the right, I mean, it goes back to Bernie and Trump. I think a lot more Americans are anti-establishment than ever before.
Yeah. Anti-establishment, but more politically active.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And I think it's unfair, the attacks on Biden with the segregation list. I think it's too far in the fact that he was a politician in a time where you did need to work with these segregation lists because they were a lot more prevalent. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I mean, the busing topic I thought was pretty interesting with Kamala Harris because I think she brings up some points.
I mean, look, the policy itself, right? Busing came and went and was pretty much disregarded after a decade or two.
Right.
So, there's no point in arguing the actual policy of busing. It's not here anymore. It didn't really work. So it
Right.
was very strange that Kamala hammered it so hard, but boy, did she make Biden look bad. She so eloquently and deceivingly was like, "Oh, I don't think you're a racist, but let me just frame this whole attack on how I think you're a little racist." It was like, wow.
Completely.
I don't agree with her at all. I don't think Biden's a racist. I don't think he should be criticized for that busing policy decades and decades ago. But man, it really took him down a notch.
Right. And I think his big issue was all he really had to do was kind of maybe own up to it or say he's changed or times have changed, and I mean, like Buttigieg did when he was asked about that shooting scandal, he, I mean, agree or not with how his police force handled it, at least he said we couldn't get this reform done, we couldn't get things fixed.
Yeah, it does. It amazes me how, I don't know. I feel like sometimes you're right. I feel like sometimes all you have to do is like, yeah, you know what? That was a long time ago. If I could do it again, I probably would make a different decision, but I made the decision based on what I knew at the time. I'm here now fighting for something newer and better for all Americans, and you just go into your political speech, right? You use it as your advantage.
And actually that's why I think the most eloquent on the stage, I'm really, I mean, I'm obviously undecided, but I've really become pretty behind Pete Buttigieg because I like just his manner and just he seems like the smartest guy on the stage sometimes, just with the way he handles himself. And I think this scandal with the shooting doesn't look good because he is the chief executive of a Midwest city. And if there's chaos in this smaller city, what's it going to be like if he was president? It's not a good look since he already has executive experience.
Right.
And so I think that could hurt him. But I do like that he is kind of a more centrist option.
He is. And he's impressed me as well. I actually didn't know too much about him before this debate. But after the debate, I do have a positive look on Buttigieg. Let's see. So Kamala Harris, I saw that. Let's see. I have it right here. That is reported now. She is, because of a national poll, she surged from 8th to 3rd. She's polling tied with Elizabeth Warren, Kamala Harris.
Wow.
So she got a huge bump from that debate. And
that's impressive.
Yeah. She pulled ahead of Buttigieg and is now tied with Warren. So that I think she's got to ride that wave. I think people are going to look out for her now. I think she just at least for the next month or two, she cemented herself as a heavy hitter.
That's interesting because I do kind of get a similar feeling between her and Warren. Obviously, they don't have all the same ideas or policy decisions, but I think that they both seem almost the most prepared. Like they're that kid who goes to class with a binder full of material.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But I also worry though that that's also what Hillary was like.
Hillary was like, she had a team of people that brought her the binders.
That's fair.
I feel like Warren and Harris are the ones that are actually in the room studying the binder themselves. They wrote the binder themselves. But of course, that's just a gut feeling, right? Let's talk about some losers, for lack of a better term. Some losers.
Yeah.
Klobuchar. I don't know. Tried to take some shots. She just came off awkward. Gillibrand came off really desperate. I don't know if you saw. She was constantly fighting for time to a point where it was annoying.
Yeah, she was always speaking over someone. She was always kind of in this defensive attack where if they were talking about a policy or some negative side of it, she would always kind of jump in and kind of not only interrupt the speaker but the moderators. And coming into this debate, I actually thought that she was one of the ones I'd watched some interviews and thought, I think she has a lot to say, but she didn't show it well.
No, she did not have a good showing.
No.
Who is the one? Who is the one that was said that we should still have troops in Afghanistan, and then Tulsi Gabbard?
Tim Ryan.
Yeah.
Tim Ryan. Yeah.
Tim Ryan. That's it. Rest in peace.
And he got destroyed by it because Tulsi Gabbard is the only veteran in the field.
Right.
Who had experience in Iraq, and she still is actually, to this day, I think she's in the reserve. So she's still an acting military member. And you could just see that you could just see the look at her face, like, that's just not acceptable. Like, and she had a good point. What do you tell the parents who just lost their children? That we need to be better engaged in the Middle East. Like, what do you call the last 15 years?
Yeah, I think gosh, I think Ryan picked a terrible hill to die on, because
Yes.
he should have just let it go, or just, been like, he should have just kept it vague, like, we'll absolutely reevaluate the situation in Afghanistan, because left or right, I think most Americans by far don't want any more involvement in wars in the Middle East.
Completely.
Especially one in Afghanistan that's been going on since 2001. I mean, that's 18 years.
Completely, man. And it's just kind of a hole to go send your boys and girls to die in, because I mean, it's just a tribalistic country that still doesn't have a really good infrastructure or government, and so it's just a tribalistic country with just kind of a quagmire for militaries, and I don't think we ever listened to history.
No, we don't. And Ryan sure as hell didn't listen to political history. If I was his campaign manager, I would have been like, listen, man, I don't care what you think about going into Afghanistan. You can't go out there and say we'll keep troops. You can't. Not in the first
Right.
Democratic primary of this season. You can't be like, I'm the only one that wants more conflict in Afghanistan. Like, that's just suicide.
Oh yeah.
That's suicide.
Oh, completely. And it's too bad, because actually I think he had one of the better points of the first night when he said that the party needs to stop being a coastal elitist party and start appealing to the Midwest again. And I
You're
think
absolutely right.
he actually, in some ways, could have been a good middle voice. But he looked like his grandpa died every time they asked him a question. He looked like he was in pure shock, and I don't know if he actually, I don't know if he was prepared or just can't speak well.
I don't think he's just ever been on that kind of stage, right? Like, he was surrounded
Right.
by like people that dominate news cycles daily, and I think probably 98% of the people watching had never heard of this guy before. I think you're absolutely right.
Right.
He made a fantastic point that when it comes down to the real big boy election, the Democrats have to appeal to Middle America, and they have not
Right.
been doing well at it.
And I mean, just to go back on a point on that topic, is, I mean, the first night really actually made me concerned for the Democratic Party. I voted for John Kasich in 2016, so I obviously can't talk much in that one. But I'm just worried where the Democratic Party is going, because I mean, you had Julian Castro talking about how they need to expand abortion rights for trans female women, and then you had Booker and O'Rourke going off in a Spanish contest, and by the way, their accents in Spanish was awful.
That was so cringy.
And then you had Booker almost like bragging to everyone that he lives in the neighborhood where he used to work, so he's always hearing gunshots, and it was almost just him kind of bragging that he can connect with minorities. And it's funny because he's not that popular with minorities.
No, he's not.
And I just worry that they're trying to appeal to this less than 1% of minority groups, and they're just going to totally mess up with these voters again, just like Hillary, but maybe even worse.
Yeah, man, the primary system, right? Like, you got to be. They're all trying to be more left, and it's just not gonna. It's not gonna end up well, because the media's gonna run with it, right? They're gonna, like the New York Post. They're gonna have comics like that make it look terrible, and I agree.
Right.
I think the problem here, the thing is, I want a candidate that does not play into the identity politics, right? I don't.
Exactly.
I really don't care what your gender orientation is, right? Just give me some good policies that benefit all of America. Buttigieg is great at that, right? Yeah, when he first came in, everyone was talking about, he would be the first gay president, and he's the one that's like, you know what? I really don't care about that. I actually care about other things. Like, don't define me as just the guy who's gay who's running. Define me by my policies and my experience, right? So that's good. But yeah, you're right. If they're talking about expanding abortion rights for transgender people, oh man, baby boomers don't know what the hell they're talking about.
No,
Middle America's like, what is this?
Oh, and it's just pretty much a nail in the coffin. If they really want to beat a president who can sit on the toilet and tweet insults,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just going to be. And I mean, the one thing I wanted to ask you about too is I wrote it down because I was thinking about it, is Tulsi Gabbard. It bothers me that she was the only candidate on night one that was asked about her conservative upbringing, and and if she now supports gay marriage. And this was a very, to me, it seemed like almost kind of an attack on her, because she grew up, I think, in a very, I think it was a Hindu family. I'll have to check.
Right. She was from a very religious and conservative family.
Right. And to me, and they asked her, so do you now support gay marriage? And I kind of go, why aren't you asking anyone else this? It seems like they really don't want someone like her, who's kind of a moderate veteran, to be in this conversation with these other groups.
Yeah, I noticed some interesting things about the debate that, I don't know. It's hard to define, right? But I did feel like there were some softballs at the heavy hitters, right? They were throwing softballs at Sanders and Biden and Warren, but then they would pick out the most obscure stuff from the lower tiers, like Tulsi Gabbard, like, you came from a religious family, like, wow, that is. All right, we're gonna go there. I felt that too. I felt not just Gabbard. I forget who else, but it might have been one of the guys that was like more lax on guns. Right? They would always pull out these things at the last minute and target them.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and that's my big issue. You could kind of see who had the DNC stamped on their forehead.
Yeah,
you could definitely see it, and
I mean, it was moderated by MSNBC, right? So
true. Yeah, that was. I mean, there were some cringeworthy moments in just that. I mean, just that part alone. These little social conversations, and then they run out of time. I don't know, man. It's interesting. I mean, I think it's funny though, because Beto O'Rourke, they threw him some softballs, but he dropped every one of them.
Oh my gosh, I don't know what his deal is. He just seems so fake to me. I mean, I know a lot of this. Look, it's the first couple debates, right? A lot of my feelings are gut feelings, but I have a gut feeling that O'Rourke just seems fake, like, and weird.
Yeah.
I mean, he lost his election in 2018, and he goes right to the presidential. It's like, dude, you just want to win something. Do you really care about civil service and policy, or are you just here to get your name and recognition?
Yeah, to me, it seems like the second one you said, because there's just something ingenuine about him to me. And to me, he only spoke in personal anecdotes about people he'd met along the campaign trail. There was never actually, they'd always ask him, say, about healthcare. And then he'd go to a story about a 27-year-old he met in Texas. Yeah. It would never be specifics. And I mean, I get it. Those, like, real life stories are part of the picture, but
right. Real life stories are part of the picture, but it was pretty obvious when everyone was doing the appeal to emotion, right? Like, every single candidate had their story of, like, I knew someone with cancer, or my wife had this, or my father of this. It's like, yeah, you know what? Everyone in America does. That's what the healthcare problem is about. Like, everyone in America knows someone that has gone through terrible health problems. So stop trying to appeal to me by, oh, well, my son and blah, blah, blah. Like, I felt like there was at one point, I was on the second night, it was like Biden, Booker, Buttigieg, it was all of them. They just kept coming out with these personal anecdotes about people getting sick. And I was like, yes, we know people get sick. Yeah, figure it out. Like, talk about how you're going to fix it.
Oh, totally. And that's why the media really went hard on Delaney in the first night. And I get it. He probably shouldn't be in the debate. He's polling. I don't even know what he's polling at, but it can't be great. And I just remember when a lot of the candidates, including Bill de Blasio, were saying that they want to abolish private health care. And as I recall, Delaney just basically said, I think we should be the party that keeps what's working and fixes what's broken.
Yeah.
And I think actually some ideas like that are true. Like, we only give people Medicare once they're already sick, and I think that's something that needs to be broken. But if you're one of the 100+ million people that have private insurance, I don't think that should be taken away from you either.
Right.
All of Western Europe has private and public health care. If you can afford the private health care, then do it. But,
yeah, I mean, I get right. So I get health insurance from my employer, right? At the private company, right. They give me employer health insurance. I'm glad that they do, and I'll take it. And I pay in a little bit to it. They pay most of it, and it's good service. Like, I would want to keep that, right? I also want to make sure that everyone else gets covered, and that healthcare is an option for everyone, regardless of how wealthy they are. But that doesn't mean I don't like my private insurance. Like, I'm one of those that I kind of want to keep my employer's insurance. It's really good.
Yeah.
Sure. I think overall it's a shame, because there's a good, like, middle ground candidates here that I think can appeal to middle America if given the chance. but they're gonna get drowned out by these like really professional and good like the Kamala Harrises and the Elizabeth Warrens. And then like these are heavy hitter politicians that are super practiced, and they appeal to Democrats. They appeal to liberals. And of course, the primary, that's what it's about. And unfortunately, the middle of the road voice gets drowned out, and it's a shame.
Right. And I mean, you touched on earlier, and I didn't really respond, but like Amy Klobuchar, you know, she was supposed to be one of those moderates that I think really was going to be able to have a big hitting attempt to get the Midwest. And you're right, I think she fell flat. So I think we just need to hope that some of these middle people can find a way to go up that notch, but I don't really know particularly how that's possible.
Or if you just have, you know, the heavy hitters at the top to get too aggressive and end up hurting each other in the process, like a mutually assured destruction, right? Like, if
That's fair.
Because I mean, you know, it's obvious now that the first one we got to peg down is Biden, right? You have to get rid of Biden if you want a chance. And then past that, like, but if you had Kamala Harris and Biden going at it so much so that they both reveal some scandalous stuff or get into awkward arguments, and then they both go down, then that can leave a vacuum. I don't know. It's gonna be tough, man. It's gonna be tough for any of these lower tier politicians to break through, I think.
Yeah, I mean, this actually seems very reminiscent of the 2016 debates. You had the front runners, you know, Jeb Bush, Ted Cruz, Donald Trump, and you had some of these moderates like, I mean, Kasich, Rand Paul. I don't really want to say he's a moderate, but he's more in that libertarian scope of things. And I supported a few of those, you know, and you just saw these guys kind of get, you know, thrown to the left or right of the stage while the center guys ate each other.
Man,
and I think
Kasich,
that's why Trump.
dude.
Yeah, poor Kasich, man. I really liked him, and
I remember.
I'm just worried that. Go ahead, sorry.
I remember one debate where he was literally like, "What the hell is going on?" Like,
Yep. Yep. And I just kind of am concerned about seeing these debates and knowing that the whole Republican Party more or less is behind Trump, and knowing that there's a big apparatus that these Democrats are going to have to face. And I just don't know how many of them are up to the challenge right now. I really don't see. There's not even one right now that I could say they could beat Donald Trump right now.
no, you're right. I'm in the same boat. There's not one that I think is like a surefire, like this is the guy or gal. Like, I mean, it's so early, right? It's still so early.
Right.
And a lot can happen because, I mean, gosh, I remember obviously in the beginning of 2016, everyone thought Donald Trump in the debates was a joke. So you never know what could happen, and I'm sure we'll see the strategies change. I think people are going to be more aggressive after this debates because it showed, right? Kamala Harris was the most aggressive against Biden, and now she jumped 5 positions in polling. I think everyone else is going to take note of that, and now they're going to get a little bit more aggressive.
True. I completely agree. Well, I think on that note, do you think we should try to dive into what's happening on the other side of the world right now?
Yes. So one of these issues that these candidates are going to eventually face, maybe if they get elected, and probably talk about in the debates, is foreign policy. And the biggest foreign policy issue, right now, is the issue with Iran. Right. So we should probably give a little context as to what the hell is going on for any listeners that don't know. Basically, the United States. During the Obama era, I mean, we're not going to go back to the 70s and stuff. It's just too far.
Yeah, we don't got the time for that. We're not Joe Rogan on here yet. So.
yeah, for real. But basically, there was an Iran deal, right? The thing was called the Iran deal, which was signed by Obama as well as other partner states like Germany, the United Kingdom, France. Its official name was...
The Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action.
Yes. So that idea was that Iran guaranteed that they would not further any development or research towards nuclear weapons, and that the current nuclear plants used for electricity would be routinely and randomly searched and monitored by UN officials. That was the agreement, and then the give back, right, was that the U.S. would remove their sanctions on the Iranian economy, which had been, you know, pretty strong and pretty detrimental to the Iranian economy for a while, since, you know, the Bush era when they started serious sanctions. So that was the Obama era, and then Trump came along and decided to back out of the JCPA, and impose tariffs, not tariffs, sanctions on the Iranian economy. Well, since then, the Iranians have shot down one of our drones. They have allegedly attacked some oil tankers belonging to America as well as the Saudi Arabians near the Gulf of Oman. So tensions are definitely rising. Escalation would be the correct term. And so now we sit at the. So recently, right, we had an unmanned drone. Trump, I guess, apparently, based on the reports, had jets in the sky ready to take out like radar sites as well as some other like aircraft related sites, but then backed out at the last moment when he learned that it would probably kill 150 people. Since then, both Iran and the United States have said they don't want a war with each other, but they would be willing if necessary. And that's kind of where we stand. Did you have any revisions to that or anything you want to add to kind of like the context?
No, I think that was a very good summary. Yeah, and I mean, like I basically think that it's become a really difficult topic because I think a lot of people think this was Trump's whim, just his divisive decision making as a businessman that led for him to want to pull out of this deal. But to me, this was actually more of the standard GOP mantra. Because do you remember when they brought Benjamin Netanyahu into Congress to talk to the senators back in right before the Iran deal was passed?
Yeah.
Where the GOP has been for years trying to get out of this deal, because obviously the Israeli lobby is very strong,
as well as the Saudi Arabian influence.
And I mean, I'm really torn on the issue because I think that Iran is a very large player in the region that has links to some very questionable organizations such as Hezbollah. And I think they've also been sending money to Hamas. And they have bragged multiple times about wanting to wipe Israel off the map. And as a world power, they're much different than, say, Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan. They have a social fabric. They have a civil society. They're a very religious country that disagrees wholeheartedly with the West. And so on that scope, I think that eventually it seems like our paths have been meant to collide for a long time. And so it's very difficult for me to see a great option out of this, especially now when we've pulled out of a deal that required trust on both sides. And like Obama said, the deal wasn't meant to build on trust. It was built on verification. And I think that to a certain extent, Iran was holding up to it, but it did seem like this lift of sanctions was allowing them to be a little bit more chaotic and uncontrolled in the Middle East.
Yeah, I think we have to think big picture, right? Like what would be the ideal? Like what is like America? Like when people talk about this is in American interest, what is America's interest, right? If we could choose the fate of Iran, what would it be? Personally, I would want it to become an open and free democracy, right? I think most people would say that. It's how you get there that's the problem. But that might not always be the end goal, right? Because a free and open democracy would be basically a regime change. I don't really know if the United States is prepared to actually look for a full-on regime change, right? Because the Ayatollah, the Ayatollah's not going to give it up anytime soon.
No.
So what's like next best of a regime change? Well, it would be to eliminate the funding of terrorist groups, to have trade and to have some economic activity, and hope that a secular majority would arise out of like a more globalized Iran.
I completely agree. And through Mike Pompeo's current strategy of maximum pressure, I mean, all it has done has imposed over 1,000 sanctions on Iran, and their inflation is expected to reach 50% by the end of this year, and GDP has shrunk by almost 7%. And so to me, all that's doing is angering the working population.
Yes.
And it's telling them, well, the West does not have anything they want to do with us, and I think Iran is actually different from, say, Saudi Arabia and some of the other big powers in the region, because it actually has a pretty progressive civil society. Like, I know the mullahs are, obviously quite fundamentalist, but actually Iran has a pretty flourishing civil society. And so for me, I am less worried about Iran's actions in the Middle East than some of the others, and so that's why it always is pretty shocking to me that we're less willing to work with them. But I guess it's because they don't have arms to sell us.
Right, and it's the relationship with Israel, right? Or the lack of one. It's their complete hatred for Israel,
Completely.
and we'll never, well, not never, but not anytime soon, defend a country that absolutely abhors Israel openly, right? Saudi Arabia probably does secretly, but we do business. We buy oil from the Saudis. We sell weapons to the Saudis as well as the Israelis. We have business deals. That's the problem is, right? I never buy the justification that we don't like Iran because they don't agree with the West and then they fund terrorist groups. Well, so does the Saudis, right? Like if that's the bar, then we're being hypocrites because we chill hard with the Saudis and they do that all the time.
Completely.
I think you're right about the culture, though. I think it's possible to have a flourishing secular culture, or at least a more moderate culture, because they had it. They had it pre revolution. People were wearing bell bottoms and driving sports cars, and then after that, it was strict religious law. But you're right that it's hurting the workers. I think that's if the end goal is, hey, we just want to hurt their economy, yeah, sanctions will do it. We know sanctions will hurt their economy, but what's the end goal? What's the next step? Because we've also sanctioned moving in medical supplies into Iran, and that is really dangerous because now you're starting to get into humanitarian issues and really sketchy ethical stuff that they could easily say, look, America doesn't care about you. America is evil. They're preventing medical supplies to get in here. They want you to die, and that just hurts the situation.
Right, and I think you touched on it really well right there. Sanctions almost become a political apparatus for the mullahs regime, because then they can say the West is out to get us. They don't want us to be able to flourish. It's pretty much almost a political slogan for radicalism.
Yeah, I mean that's what North Korea.
I think we've seen it. Yeah. I mean, and so that's where I'm worried, because I think Trump's maximum pressure kind of ideology, which he's used all over the world, mainly in Korea and with Iran. I mean, I think there are some merits to having a strong fist against dictators and powerful world leaders. But I'm just really extremely worried that because Iran and the United States right now are each issuing wilder threats, one could end up misreading the other's red lines.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Right now, ships have been damaged and an unmanned drone has been shot down. Right now, there's no deaths related to this, 2019 conflict. But I think all it would take is an American dying, and then you would have some serious issues. I think, and if that's a red line worth putting, then that's an understandable red line, right? If an American dies, then we're going to come back, full force. But that might be an overreaction. I don't know. We'll see. Well, I mean, obviously that's a whole hypothetical, but I think I want to address I don't think it was a good idea for us to back out of the Iran deal. No. It has led to escalation and more problems. I think we're basically resetting the drawing board. And it's worth remembering that, look, if we had 100% proof that Iran was going against the deal and going behind our backs and trying to get nuclear weapons, then yeah, I'm for it. Back out of the deal, put pressure on them. We have to go back to the drawing board because they deceived us. But the intelligence communities from the other countries in the deal stated that they were confident that they were abiding by the deal. They were like, look, we don't really see an issue here. I mean, if you want to increase some securities, we can do that. But, Germany, the UK, France all said they didn't feel that Iran was being deceitful.
Right.
And we still backed out.
Yeah, I think the Iran deal, much like the Paris Climate Accords, was a political decision. It wasn't a rational decision. Exactly.
Yeah.
I think most of Europe has. I think maybe it's because of their proximity, or maybe they've witnessed more of the issues in the region but they seem to have a better understanding that Iran needs to be dealt with, not ignored.
Yes. Yeah.
And yeah, I just don't really know where we go from here, though, because we have lost faith. Not only like Iran has lost faith not only in us, but also Europe has lost faith in us.
Right.
Russia's lost faith in us. I mean, this was a big deal because Russia and the United States and China, all of us were in agreement on working towards this with Iran. There's not many deals where every part of the world is so willing to do this, you know?
Yeah, it's true. It's true. I mean, yeah. How often do you get China, Russia, and the U.S. to agree on something, and then we back out because of the president changed, and then so now it's even if the president changes again in 2020 or 2024, right? Then okay, like we'll go back and do a new deal. Well, what are they going to do? Well, who's to say it's not going to get taken down again in 4 years after that, right?
Oh, completely.
It seems to be a reoccurring issue that the United States foreign policy, of course, everything changes and shifts around, but it's hard to make long-term, lasting deals and alliances when one president could come in and just wipe the slate clean. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing here.
Yeah, the United States seems to always politicize foreign policy, and I know everyone does it, but we just have a very bad track record of doing it, you know?
Yeah.
I think the last 20 years has not been good for us, and we don't seem to learn from our lessons either, you know? And like to me my biggest worry, I was reading The Economist a few days ago about this, and they had a good point about these sanctions and how we're currently dealing with Iran with this maximum pressure. It was Cuba has resisted sanctions for decades, but more probably a defeated Iran would heed the lessons of a nuclear-armed North Korea and redouble its efforts to get a bomb.
Yeah.
And so I almost feel like if Iran can't go down the legal and diplomatic road to do so, they will then just go down the shadow empire way of doing it, playing dirty to get something worse and more dangerous, you know? And I don't think Michael Bolton understands that. He claims to be a Iran genius and Middle Eastern hawk, but he only seems to know that he wants to bomb Iran without any actual plan or repercussions and link to it.
Yeah. Yeah, again, I think there's a different paradigm, right? Like I'm in the paradigm of I want the people of Iran to want to have an open democracy and want to be, more accepting of Western values. I don't think that's on the radar for some of these guys at the war hawks, right? I think they see Iran as an enemy that needs to be contained or restrained, right? But the end goal is not the same as what I think it should be.
Right. And this goes, it's on Iran, but this goes off a little bit to the side. But it's kind of a rhetorical question is, do you think that Trump picked Michael Bolton and Mike Pompeo, who are obvious war hawks in the region, because that's what he actually believes should happen? Or do you think it's because he actually is an isolationist, like he's always talked about, but the GOP and what the GOP needs and has always supported is them?
Yeah, it's probably something to do with that, when Trump actually got in office, someone had to tell him, look, you tweet a lot about domestic issues, right? And that's great for your base. But the reality is your actual day-to-day job is mostly dealing with foreign policy. Americans forget that so much that the president focuses most of his time on foreign policy and goes to G20 summits and talks with China, right? All this stuff that we see him doing, that's most of his job. He probably had to have the realization that someone needed, you need strong foreign policy guys to handle this.
Right. Oh, completely. And that's why actually I think that Trump's decision to maybe not, send the planes over there, I think that actually might have probably come from his almost lifelong view on dealing with the Middle East.
Yeah. I mean, look, I'm glad he decided not to bomb and kill 150 people. Some of that stuff he said in the news, right, is a little weird, right? Because he said at the last moment he asked the general how many casualties would be. It's like, no, man, that's the first page. That's when you're briefed about in a military operation, they always talk about the expected casualties. You wouldn't have had to ask the general. But anyway, regardless, I'm glad he did decide against it, because that would have caused something even way worse than we're dealing with now.
Yeah, completely. And I, I just, I think the next couple months will probably be a telltale sign. But I do think that everyone's learned from Iraq, because this war would be much more costly and there'd be much more casualties.
It'd be so much worse.
Yeah, it would cost the international community a large amount, and who knows what would actually happen to our Israeli allies if Iran became aggressive.
I
Probably
don't,
wouldn't be good for that part.
I don't think if a serious military operation happened in Iran, I don't think the U.S. would ever have allies in that area again. As far as
Right.
like, I mean, think about it. If you're a person living in the Middle East, you're like, oh, like I'm 25 years old. My entire life, I've known of the U.S. invading Iraq, invading Afghanistan, and now invading Iran. Why would
Right.
you? Why would
Right.
you like the U.S.? Why would you want to be friends with the West if they've done nothing but literally go down the row of countries in the Middle East and have conflicts? We're not gonna fix. We're not gonna fix the Middle East by some outside force, some strongman stuff. It's not gonna happen. It's gonna have to come
No.
from the people there, getting feeling as if the West is better, right? Or or for example, like Iran's economy crashes because of like oil, right? They have a like something in Venezuela happens in Iran, and the people call
Right.
for change, but themselves, the people there, they want to change. It's never gonna happen because of some major conflict.
Right. I fully agree with that. And I I actually I I think the Council on Foreign Relations put out an interesting option, or just a thesis on how this issue maybe could be dealt with. And basically they said that the proposal we have, which is the subject to negotiation with Iranians, is that the United States would work with several countries, possibly France, Germany, the UK, and work with Iran to negotiate a multilateral fuel cycle facility, but it's on Iranian territory.
Hmm.
And I think that would be an interesting compromise. They actually say in the article that Iranians were somewhat interested. Actually, President Ahmadinejad actually himself proposed this a couple years ago, um, which I always do question his tensions. He was not exactly a peace lover in that region,
No.
but I do think that like having almost something like a UN RAN facility, but it's in Iran, could be a first step. But then it seems just like an invasion of Iran's own.
Sovereignty, right?
Yes, yes.
It could be that, yeah, but that would address. I mean, that would kind of address the issue that they themselves brought up, right? Because we were like, well, you're using this stuff to make nuclear weapons, and they said no, we're going to use it for electricity. Then
Right.
that's good. They'd be like, okay, if you want to make electricity, let's do it together. We'll do it together. We'll regulate it. We'll solve that problem together, so that one, you can't like use it as an excuse, and we'll have oversight of the operations. I think
Yeah.
it's a good idea, but I think that like we could have, if we should have been like, if we really were unsatisfied with the original Iran deal and wanted something like that, that could have just been discussed and worked through instead of us backing out, right? Like now it feels like we just went back 15 years to when Bush put sanctions on Iran, and that's where we stand. We literally got rid of 10, 15 years of progress.
Right. Right. And I mean, I think of the whole Middle East in the general nutshell is that, and we're kind of stuck in a time loop.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think it's almost just because, and I'm not as optimistic, I guess, is I think that there is a true cultural, ideological, religious divide between the East and the West. Maybe
Yeah.
not the East, more the Middle East and the West. And I just don't really know if the Middle East values the same things we do. And so we keep getting into these conflicts over certain things that both of us think completely differently on. And I think that's why the Arab Spring was not as positive in some ways as
Right.
it should have been.
Right. That's very fair, and I think that's a very just assessment, man. Because you're right. I remember when the Arab Spring happened, it was like, here we go, the Arab world's gonna open up, right? Like, welcome to the world, and then no, it quickly was like, oh, the Muslim Brotherhood took over. Oh, the guys
Right.
like the leader got jailed. Oh, the military took over. Like it didn't lead to some like, like wow, we did it, democracy. Like even if it was democratic, it quickly was tainted.
Right. Right. But then it brings up the question, the United States has nuclear facilities. Several parts of Western Europe have nuclear facilities.
Mm-hmm.
Is it our right to stop them from doing it?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that has been North Korea's response this whole time as well, Hey, everyone tells North Korea don't get nukes, and they're like, well, the U.S. hasn't pointed at us. It's fair. I mean, I agree that Iran should not have nukes, right? We can both agree that Iran should not have nukes, but it is a fair criticism. It's a fair criticism to bring up the hypocrisy of the West, that we all have nukes and we don't want anyone else to have them.
Right. So, I mean, I think before we can really go further, we need to get rid of the politics of our foreign policy.
Yes.
Which obviously is difficult, much easier said than done. But it's just really hard to have a long-term plan when one day you have John Kerry as Secretary of State, and the next day you have Mike Pompeo.
Yes, and then it's tough because the Ayatollah's not going anywhere, and even if one guy dies and the next guy comes up, they're still all pretty much in the same line. Like, they all pretty much want the same thing. So yeah, it's tough. Like, they're not changing and we are, and it's hard to make deals based off of that.
Yeah, I'm like, it's funny, it kind of wraps up the debate with what we're talking about now, and I'm actually surprised there weren't more questions on Iran.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Democrats, well, to be fair, right? Like, foreign policy is confusing and often boring for people. Like, we love foreign policy because we're into political science and we love it. But
right.
That's the not the oxymoron, the conundrum or whatever. The catch-22 is, right, Americans always care about domestic issues, and the president usually handles foreign policy. So the debates are always going to talk about, I want abortion rights for transgenders, when it's like, yeah, but you really should be focusing on Russia, China, and Iran.
yeah. I mean, completely, man. And so we'll see what happens. We'll definitely have to keep talking about this as time goes on.
Yes.
Hopefully maybe John Bolton, not Michael Bolton.
Michael Bolton.
Hopefully John Bolton shaves his mustache and maybe starts thinking about some other things. I don't know, because I just think we need a pragmatist.
Yeah. I think we don't need another GOP, a neoconservative. We don't need any more neoconservatives. Yeah. We need something else.
Right.
But yeah, that should wrap it up for this episode. We could obviously talk about foreign policy forever.
Well, because it all interrelates.
It does.
It all
relates.
Yeah. It's a complex web of cause and effect. That's our beautiful world we live in.
It is. Well, please let us know what your thoughts were on the debates. How can we solve Iran? Comment.
Yeah, comment.
Send us an email.
And yeah, let us know your thoughts and if you want us to cover something in particular. But looks like we're definitely going to be keeping tabs on the 2020 race. It's going to be a long election, but it's going to be a juicy one. So we're going to keep you up to date on that and our thoughts, and as well as a plethora of other topics.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Thanks, everyone, for listening. Have a good night.
Take care.